Hello, everyone. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, not, not a tax attorney. So check everything I'm saying in this video with a tax professional or a tax attorney. This is meant as a light overview of an issue remote workers are facing in 2020, which is why I'm involved as an employment attorney. But check everything tax law related or adjacent with a tax professional, because that is not my area of expertise, and I always want you to get the best advice from the best person for that particular field, right? Okay. So, here's what's going on. We'll start with the basics of taxation, right? If you're working in a state, generally you're taxed by the state you're working in, right? That's the simplest way. You live in New York, you're taxed in New York because you work in New York as well. That's the simplest form. Then it gets a little more complex. What if you live in Connecticut but work in New York? Well, they have a deal. New York will tax you for working in New York. Connecticut will also tax you because you live in Connecticut, but they'll give you a credit of some kind for what you paid in New York. Fine. At least you're not being double taxed. It's crazy. What do they do with all the money? Who knows? But that being said, you're not being double taxed, which is something. Now, in 2020, people who used to work in New York and live in other states have a whole new situation to deal with, right? We'll take a hypothetical. Let's say you live in Vermont, but you work down in New York. Pandemic happens, COVID happens, 2020. You go up and you start working remotely from Vermont. You haven't even seen New York in 6 months. You're never coming back. You're working remotely. Your company got rid of its offices in New York. Maybe they have like one tiny office left. Believe it or not, New York says, no, you still work in New York. For our purposes, because it's something we have called the convenience rule, they're going to tell you, you still get taxed by New York. That's crazy. It gets worse. Vermont says, you don't work in New York anymore. How come they're taxing you? Those idiots down there are nutty. We're not giving you a credit just because New York is nutty. You're not working there. They shouldn't be taxing you. We're taxing you on everything you make. No credits of any kind now in Vermont. So now you're paying full tax in New York, full tax in Vermont, and you're saying, oh, by the way, the federal government's taxing you too. You're sitting there like, well, I don't really know why I'm working anymore. I'm getting taxed by so many people. I don't really have anything left. I'd have more left if I lived in Norway and paid 60% taxes, which is a whole other world, right? Okay, so you're up there. You're up there in Vermont. You're getting double taxed. You don't know what to do. There's hope. There's hope, okay? So New York's convenience rule has already been treated pretty roughly in New York's own Second Appeals Court. That's very positive for you because the law probably isn't on that firm of a legal footing. It's certainly dicey in terms of the federal aspect of this. Like, the federal government's looking at this like, what are you doing? I don't think you can do that. And then even New York's own courts sometimes don't think you can do that, right? It's getting questionable. They're really overextending themselves. They have to. They're in a $12 billion hole. They have no money, and all their people are leaving, and they're trying to claw everyone back, right? Because they couldn't run their state or their city. So that's kind of a ray of sunshine, a ray of hope that you can hope will help you out. There's also litigation. New Hampshire, which doesn't even have an income tax, is gearing up to litigate one of these kind of disputes with Massachusetts, and looks like they're also looking at doing it with New York. So essentially, New Hampshire's take is like, we don't even tax you. We don't even have an income tax. So we can't even give you a credit even if we wanted to, but you're working and living in our state, and it's insane that these other states are trying to prey upon our citizens who work and live in our state. They don't work in your state anymore, so you shouldn't be able to tax them, so we're going to litigate with these other states because this is wild. How can they be doing this? How do they expect these people to live? Basically, they're trying to tax these people into submission to force them to move back to Massachusetts and New York. So New Hampshire's gearing up for litigation. This is something where I think the federal government needs to step in, because states like New York are so poorly run and so insolvent. They're going to do whatever. They're drowning. And what do we know when people drown? People hurt everyone around them trying to save themselves, right? It's panic. They're panicking. They're trying to drag everyone under the water with them, and they're not making the decisions they have to make. They're just panicking. I think we need the feds or the courts to step in and protect remote workers. It's very clear to me there needs to be protection for remote workers. We're going to keep bringing you that news as we follow the situation, but I wanted everyone to be aware as the pandemic and work from home extends on further and further and further, that this is a hot button issue and something you as a remote worker need to have in your head to worry about. Because come tax time, you might be very surprised at who is taxing you and how much. You could get quite the tax bill from all these from different states and the feds, and boy, I don't know what you're going to do, right? So we got to be aware. We're going to keep watching this. I'm going to tell you if anything develops. Stay safe out there from the pandemic, from the money-hungry states. Just try to take care of yourself and your family. Good luck.